Good evening. Thank you for coming. We'll get started in just a couple minutes.
It will.
So we have our thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you being here today. We're promoting all of our panelists up to the screen so we can get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us this evening. My name is Chris Monroe, and it is my honor and privilege to serve as superintendent for Santa Cruz City Schools. Gracias por venir a todos a esta junta esta noche. Mi nombre es Cristina Monroe. Yo soy la superintendente del Santa Cruz City Schools. Si necesita traducir, Jessica Serna Castañeda está aquí esta noche para ayudar. Jessica, can you explain how the interpretation works?
Sí, buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. En un momento van a ustedes ver en su pantalla un globo, ahí donde van a poder entrar ustedes y escoger español, y ahí me van a escuchar a mí traduciendo esta reunión de esta tarde.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation this evening. We have a brief presentation. We'll share about some resources that the district has to support students and families. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. And you can also ask questions throughout the webinar, and we'll answer them as we go, either orally or in writing. And the way that you'll answer questions is using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Actually, before we go into the presentation, why don't we introduce ourselves first, just because it's easier to see everyone on the screen before the slide deck is there. So I'm going to go around my screen and ask folks to introduce themselves. Jessica Serna Castañeda is doing our translation this evening. She's a school community coordinator for us at Bransford 40 Middle School. And Dorothy, can you start?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dorothy Coito, and I'm Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services.
Thank you. Rishi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rishi Lal. I am the Safety and Wellness Coordinator for the Department of Student Services.
Thank you, Rishi. Casey.
Good evening. I am glad you're all here. My name is Casey O'Brien. I'm the Director of Student Services, recently coming from Bransford 40 Middle School, which is why it says Principal Director under my name.
And we're excited to welcome him to the central office as our Director of Student Services. And Sam Rollins is going to introduce himself, and he is going to walk us through our presentation tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Rollins, Chief of Communications for Santa Cruz City Schools and a parent of 2 kids now at Galt Elementary. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll be going through what will hopefully be a pretty brief presentation before we spend more time on Q&A. And Chris, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Rearrange things here. Okay. Is that up there? Should be the
Yes.
introductions page. Okay. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone of what Chris said, which is at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little icon with 2 little chat bubbles on it that says Q&A. Throughout this presentation, feel free to write your questions into the Q&A. We will answer most of them after the presentation, but since we have so many experts on student services and district resources here, they will also be answering, or they may be answering as we go. So any question that pops up as we're going through the presentation, please write it down. As Chris said, we'll answer some of them in person after the presentation, and some of them we'll do on the fly. So this first slide is our district goals and values. I guess this would be values and goals. And we like to put this up at the start of pretty much any meeting that we have, certainly every public meeting that we have. And I'm just going to give everyone a second to read through it really quick. And then in a second, we'll go to the Spanish version as well. So really, the sort of 1,000-foot view of this is that we really want to prepare every single student for their goals post-graduation. We want every student post-graduation to be ready to enter college or career. And we know that regardless of their path forward, everyone needs to be a strong learner, regardless of what career they're interested in or what role they're seeking. And we want to make sure they have as many options as possible. Even students who have a career in mind, we want college to be an option going forward. We want them to have as many opportunities available to them. And I'm going to try as we go to make sure that I'm giving more time to the Spanish slides and not reading my own slides, because I do fall into that. So every year we also try to pick some short phrase that crystallizes what our focus for the year is and guides us as we're going through the year. And this year, we landed on empowering minds and nurturing hearts. And that may seem a little open-ended, but that is in part by design. In academia, they have this phrase of the growth edge, which is the development that's happening that's sort of most necessary, urgent, and exciting. And that's really our focus this year. We're excitedly positioned to continue to make real progress. Once again, we still have many of the supports that were extended coming out of distance learning. We're ready to make big strides academically and emotionally. So this is our focus: academic acceleration and personal growth. And this here is our table of contents for today. And really all it is a rundown of the services that are aligned behind this goal of academic acceleration and personal growth. And what we want everyone to understand, whether you're a new family or a returning family, we try to give everyone a sort of simple pitch of what we call multi-tiered systems of support, which I know is a mouthful. We commonly call it MTSS. And this is just the system by which we organize our academic and social emotional supports around a student. There's this little pyramid on your screen, and that is a sort of hierarchy of the implementation of these support services. We think of tier 1 as being the guaranteed supports that every single student gets in the whole classroom and during regular classroom instruction. Then we think of tier 2 supports as a little bit more concentrated. These are small groups, like learners working together with a bit more academic support And then that goes all the way up to tier 3, which is individual supports. That's one-on-one students working with education professionals to get that support. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but at every single one of our schools, we have RTI coordinators. Sorry for another acronym straight off the bat of MTSS, but a response to intervention coordinator is a credentialed teacher who acts as a support for all of the classrooms and all of the students on campus and organizes all of our support resources dynamically around students based on what their need is at any given time and anytime they're experiencing particular challenges with an academic or emotional area. So what do these supports look like that are being organized around students? We're going to talk about those today. We're going to talk about what the academic and emotional supports are. We're going to talk a little bit about our Free Food for All program, which we're really excited to be able to have again, because that's a big support for students. We're going to review our COVID protocols heading into the year to make sure that we're keeping classrooms safe. And then we're really going to talk about how you get academic help and emotional help for your student and what's the easiest way to engage our support resources. We're then going to talk a little bit about getting involved on campus and all the ways that you can get involved, not only in supporting your school, but also in being part of the conversations that guide strategy going forward and sort of making decisions about what school looks like going forward. We're going to cover communication venues, and that means the channels by which we're going to be sending information out. Figured I'd switch this. And also the best ways that you could get in touch with us and that your input can come in. We're also going to give a rundown of our security strategy and school safety strategy, which we like to provide every year to families at the start of the school year. And then we're going to go over the recently passed bonds K and L and talk a little bit about how that is going to manifest changes at your school site and what that means for modernization at your school going forward. Okay, so first of all, we're incredibly excited to once again be able to offer free food to all of our students through the National School Lunch Program. But what we want everyone to know about free food, which again, we're incredibly excited about because it's so huge to be able to get all students to come to the table together and to remove any kind of separation between the kids who eat at school and the kids who bring food from home. We've seen just a wonderful effect in our student body at being able to offer food to everyone. But we're in a very strange position when it comes to offering free food, where we no longer have to ask people to apply in order to qualify for free food, but we are still required to get as many respondents as possible on our free food application. So essentially, it's a survey that we ask all of our parents to take. It takes about 4 minutes to enter in some information. And even though we still offer free food to all students, no matter what, regardless of whether or not you fill out the survey, the state looks at how many respondents we've had, and that will affect our funding in math, writing, counseling, and our overall food program. And the other nice thing is if you fill out the application or the survey, you become qualified for discounts potentially on your Xfinity bill, college entrance exams, AP tests, and college applications. So you can hold your phone up right now to the QR code and go off of that. You can also always go to our website, sccs.net/free lunch. And if you could help us also spread the word to just make sure that everyone understands how important it is that we have people fill out this survey, because our funding is tied to it. Headline though, we're happy to be able to offer free food once again to all of our students. And then we want to briefly review our COVID protocols. There are some new guidelines from the CDPH that allow students to return 5 days after infection if symptoms have improved and they are fever-free. It's become very similar to the guidelines around viruses in general at school. The guidelines do state that masking is still strongly encouraged 10 days post-infection to make sure that classrooms are being kept safe. CDPH is still also strongly encouraging vaccination for all students. And really, we just want to make sure that everyone understands if your child is sick, please keep them home. Whether or not they've tested positive for COVID or you're sure it's a flu, please keep your kids home if they have a virus. You can always reach out to the school to get any work that they've missed. But, you know, as we head into cold flu and COVID season, we really just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're counting on each other to keep our classrooms safe. And if you're sick, stay home. Just as general good advice. Okay, so in a minute, we're going to talk about what our academic supports look like around the student. But first, we wanted to cover the best way of getting engaged with those supports. So if you want academic help, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. Reach out to the person at your school that you know best. For most of you, that's your teacher. You can just approach your teacher and begin this conversation. And it can be as simple as that. Your teacher will know how to engage with these support resources and how to bring the RTI coordinator in to see what support resources might be appropriate for your student. You know, you can also always approach your counselor. In middle and high schools, there's a counseling office that you can make contact with, but also even your counselor in elementary school. You can approach your principal, particularly in elementary, and then in middle and high school, assistant principals are going to be more involved in that process. But again, the simplest thing to remember is ask. Ask for help from the person that you know best on campus, and that will start the conversation. And I should apologize to Jessica for moving quickly through these and not giving as much time to the Spanish slide. So the next slide, we're going to spend more time on the Spanish slide because there's a very similar answer to where you should go if you want to get social emotional help for your student. Approach the person that you know best on campus. It can be your teacher. Certainly the counselors and the counseling offices will be a great contact for this. We're incredibly happy to be able to have licensed counselors in the elementary and also the dedicated social emotional counselors, licensed social emotional counselors in middle and high school. You can always reach out to your principal and assistant principals in secondary. And also, you can always send an email or reach out to the school via the website, because we know that sometimes these can be harder conversations to have. And, you know, it could take some courage to work up to doing it in person. And if it's uncomfortable, you can always send us an email. And we also wanted to make the point that our social emotional resources are not reserved for any level of crisis. If your student is experiencing anxiety that you know about, or heightened stress, or if you're just aware of them going through a conflict with their friends and having, you know, some emotional bumps, please reach out. These resources are there for the purpose of supporting your students. And so any way that you're comfortable making contact, reach out to the school. Okay, so now hopefully we've covered the way that you will get engaged with academic resources. Let's go over what some of those resources are. As I said, there is an expert on your campus in student and classroom support. That is your RTI coordinators. Again, RTI stands for Response to Intervention. But one thing that the RTI coordinators do is they track the progress and they track the development of every student so that they can be organizing resources around them, identifying who's experiencing challenges and what the best ways are of giving them support in those challenges. The other thing that I wanted to say is all of these supports are designed to work toward student independence. We often say that everyone who needs support gets support, but we also want to say that the goal of these supports is to give students the tools to be able to manage challenges going forward on their own as well. So there's many different kinds of interventions throughout the school day. Like I said, in elementary, sometimes this means bringing like learners together to work in small groups so they have more attention from educators, or even one-on-one, sitting down with the RTI coordinator, the teacher, or para-educators to make sure that they're getting extra support in a particular area. In the secondary, there are tutorial periods during and after school that your student might get engaged with so that they have some more direct help on certain areas. There's also a tutoring schedule at your school. You can check in at the counseling office or with the counselor to see what that looks like. In high school, we offer something called credit recovery so that you can spend more time with a particular academic area that has proven challenging. We also have a program that we're incredibly happy with, a peer tutoring program that we've really expanded in the past couple of years because it's proven to be such a win-win in the secondary, that's middle and high school, where students who are tutors in the peer tutoring program get the benefit of going over the curriculum again and having to teach it. They get a much deeper dive into the curriculum. But then also students who are being tutored are able to engage with the subject matter with someone who's not only a much more understanding of their perspective as a student, but who has very recently learned the curriculum as well. And so we've seen that just work incredibly well. So you can reach out to your counseling office to see how to get in touch or get involved in peer tutoring on either side of it. And then, of course, we're also really happy to still be able to offer summer school, which gives so many students that extra time with the curriculum and with each other. And I should once again apologize to Jessica because I didn't move to this one as fast. But this is sort of like the top level snapshot of what our academic supports look like. It's really just a matter of managing more time for students to spend with educators and experts in the material so that they can take the time with it. Okay. So moving into our counseling programs, these are the social emotional resources, but also, of course, the counseling offices handle a lot of tracking of academics as well. So we're incredibly happy and grateful to Santa Cruz and the greater Santa Cruz community in our part of the county for supporting our counselors. It is in part through parcel taxes that were passed years ago by Santa Cruz that we're able to have licensed counselors at all of our elementary schools, which isn't necessarily that common at elementary schools, and then also comprehensive counseling programs in the middle and high schools as well. One thing that we wanted to highlight that isn't a social emotional support is the California College Guidance Initiative, which is a classroom curriculum, but also a set of online tools that help students, teachers, and families track progress through high school towards college, which has proven to be incredibly helpful, and we're happy to be able to offer it. We also have social emotional learning worked into our classroom curriculum from starting writing TK all the way to grade 8. And we're really excited about that because it really establishes all the vocabulary and understanding around behavioral health, mental health, social emotional health, so that students can develop that understanding and tools of self-regulation right at the start of school so that they can have a high level of understanding of their sort of behavioral health as they're moving through school. We, of course, have school social workers at all grade levels. That's even recently been expanded. We have substance use counseling available, as well as other kinds of counselings and trainings available. You should contact your counseling office, your assistant principal, to know more about that. We're actually going to talk more about that in just a moment. Referrals to community resources and wellness centers. I'm going to switch the slide and then talk about those. So one thing that we're also really happy about is our counseling offices maintain very strong connections with all the resources, mental health, behavioral health, and just health resources all across the county, so that if there is something that your student or your family needs that we are unable to provide at school, we will know where to go to get that service and will help navigate it. And we can make an introduction rather than just pointing in the direction of a website. We're also really excited to be offering opening our first wellness center at SoCal High in the winter. And what we want to do is set up these at least all of our high schools. And these are spaces where students can always go to get mental, emotional, social help and help with navigating those resources. But also we're just establishing them as comforting, safe places on campus that students can go if they need to remove themselves from the day, if they need some time, if they need help self-regulating or just space to self-regulate. We're making these known safe places for students to be able to go to. Okay, so we will cover some more details on our support systems in just a moment, but we also wanted to cover the best ways of getting involved at school. There's so many different ways to get involved at school. Probably the easiest way in is every single one of your schools has a PTA, a PTO, a home and school club, a booster club. That is a group of parents who help organize time and resources to support the school. And these are a lot of fun. I am part of the PTO at Galt, and it's a group of parents and staff members who get together and basically say, okay, what do we want for our upcoming event? What's it going to look like? How do we manage volunteers? It's a great way to get to know the school staff and to really work yourself into the rhythms of school as well. Now, throughout the year, your school administrators will be holding meetings of all kinds. And, I really encourage you to go when you can. Not only are they going to be telling you important info about the school, but again, it's another opportunity to get to know your principal, the school staff, to get involved, to ask questions, to meet other parents. Every school has a school site council, which you can be asked to be added to or asked to be given a seat on. I think there's a set number of seats at them all. But this is where parents and staff members will talk about what's working, what's potentially needed, and what strategy should look like going forward at your school site. We also have our English Learner Advisory Council at every school, ELAC, and this is the organization that gives voice to English learner parents and allows them to give input into our English development programs. Trying to decide when to switch this over. I'm going to switch it over now. We also have our District Advisory Committee, which is again, a group of family members who meet with staff and analyze and discuss the results of our big annual survey that brings input in from families all across the district, from families, staff, and students all across the district. And I am going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, because we're going to go through a bunch of pretty big substantive changes that have happened in the district in the past few years that have come directly out of input from families, staff members, and students. And we really want to make that point because one of our fears is the idea that people will hold back on something that they think is important because they think, oh, no one at the district will get that message. It won't make it to the right people or whatever. And we really want to make the point clear. We comb through all the results from these surveys and all this input, and we really use it to guide what we do and how we provide services going forward. So we will get to that in just a moment. You can also always go to a board meeting. All of our board meetings are open to the public. You can attend in person or via Zoom and listen to the process of the board meeting, see what's on the agenda. And there's always a time for public comment as well, if you wanted to give input there. There's also going to be lots of parent groups at your school, likely. And if there aren't any or aren't the ones that you want, please make them. Create the groups, reach out to other parents, get people together. You can always approach your administration for help with that because there are a lot of ways to get involved. And the last one, and a great one, is to volunteer. And I know it can be hard to find time to volunteer at school or even in the classroom, but it's incredibly rewarding. I've done it a bunch of times at school, and it's a great way to get to know your kid's teacher, to get to know your students' peer group, to get, especially if you go on volunteer for events or field trips. It's a great way to get to know a bunch of other parents too, and it's a fun way to get involved at your school. Okay, so as I said, we do want to go over some of the substantive changes that have come through over the past few years, directly sort of driven by the input that we've gotten from parents, or families, students, and staff. We had a lot of input saying that families and students wanted more math support. Well, we added math RTI coordinators at all of our elementary schools. We created and expanded summer math programs. We created math focus within peer tutoring and added math interventions at the day because our families said that that's what they needed. Families and students said very clearly that they wanted more mental and emotional health support. Well, we added social and emotional health counselors at middle and high schools. We expanded our social workers and their support staff. We started offering more emotional health and suicide prevention trainings for staff and students, as well as sexual harassment trainings. We expanded parent education and expanded more offerings because of that input. Family and staff gave the input that they wanted more college guidance. Well, we instituted and expanded the California College Guidance Initiative in our schools. We expanded and refined our 4-year planning workshops for 9th graders so that they can have a plan through high school. We added more financial aid workshops and more college outreach. And this is one where I didn't spend enough time on the Spanish section. And I will say to everyone, and I hope Jessica says this as well, we can send this deck out to everyone who joined us today. Since you entered your email, we can send you a copy of it tomorrow so that you can go through these slides at your discretion as well to spend more time on them if you want to. Our families and students said that they wanted more support for English learners, and we added more newcomer sections, more English language development training for staff, and expanded our English language development curriculum. Families and students said they wanted more support programs during and after school. We added intervention and support periods in middle and high school. We expanded elementary after-school programs, expanded our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. We added academic middle school after-school programs, and we opened learning centers in the high school after school where students could go to get more support after the school day. And we got a lot of input over the years that campus safety was a very high priority, and we instituted screening systems at our schools, smart keyless locking systems, and advanced training with all countywide first responders. And all that is to say, please provide the input. If there's something that you know that you want or that you have questions about or that you think is important, please do reach out because we very closely follow all the input that we get, and we try to do everything we can to respond to it. Okay, so getting in touch with us and receiving information from us. And we're very near the end of our presentation, so thank you for bearing with me. So every single family in the district now has a recently redesigned website. So all the information should be more easy to navigate and much more up to date. And the other thing that we really like about the websites is if you scroll all the way down on any page that you're on, you will come to a contact form. And we know that it can be hard to know exactly who you should be reaching out to at school. So that contact form is seen by a set number of members of your front office, but it's essentially a catch-all place where if you're not quite sure who to reach out to, you can always just reach out on the website and your school administration will see it. Throughout the year, we will be sending emails, both from the district and your school site. And really every time we send an email, it's also an opportunity for you to reach back out if you have questions or input. We will be sending occasionally texts and robocalls. These will mainly come from your school site rather than from the school district, and the robocalls tend to be primarily used to inform you of attendance issues with your students. As I said, we do regularly put out surveys, especially a big family survey, and we'll make it very clear to you when that goes out, but that's the one where we really are looking for as much input as possible on everything that's going on in the district. We do send regular video updates, which tend to be a sort of digest of district news and going over a lot of events that are coming up and things like that so that everyone's in the loop. And I also encourage you to follow us on social media if that is a way that you like to get your news. We will regularly publish news and student life featurettes on our social media so that you get a good understanding of what's going on at school. And I should say that if you are in high school, your social media feeds of your schools are very active and tend to be run at least in part by students. And so they're a great window into what's going on at your school. And I also, I put my email down here at the bottom. Just as that contact form at the bottom of the school website is a good catch-all if you're not quite sure who to reach out to, I tend to be that too. There's a lot of things I don't know, but I know pretty much everyone at the district. And so I can be helpful in getting you in touch with the person you need to get in touch with, or hunting down an answer for you if you're not sure where to get it. Okay, so almost last but not least, we wanted to go over our school safety strategy. This is deeply informed by the data that's been collected that shows that school connections and relationships are the most effective preventions against violence. So we put a lot of resources into student engagement and making sure that students are connected at school. We train our staff on it, we onboard our staff on it, we survey our students, and we do everything we can to make sure that every single student is engaged and connected to their peers and to the school. Of course, we're incredibly happy that we have licensed counselors at every single one of our schools. We also do, starting in 3rd grade, run annual screenings with all students where the counselor just has the opportunity to check in with them to see if they're going through any kind of challenge, to look for any of the markers of distress. This is another thing where they train the school staffs on this as well, so that they can be aware of the markers of distress and know how to engage with students to help support their behavioral health. They also help, the counselors will also help run events on campus geared toward emotional health, mental health, and all of that. We of course train, we have standard training at every one of our schools every year on incident response of all different kinds. We also run trainings and help build strategy with first responder agencies across the county and maintain close partnerships with them so that we can respond very seamlessly and collaboratively whenever there's any kind of incident. And I should say that one thing we're really excited about is all first responder agencies in the county this year have decided to all use one framework and one centralized strategy for incident response, which should help things run even more seamlessly going forward. In terms of physical security, we have installed smart keyless locks at many of our campuses, and we'll be doing the rest of them as well, which gives both the school site itself, but every classroom a much stronger security ability. We have, thanks to the bonds A and B, which passed in 2016, been able to add more fencing and even monitored cameras at certain entrances to campus that are harder to staff. We have been using for the past year a centralized communication system amongst all of our staff members that will be able to notify them via app, text, web, and email anytime there is an incident, so that we can be certain of the fact that everyone is on the same page during incident response. And we also now have an anonymous tip line established at every one of your school sites. So if you go to your website, it's usually at the bottom of the Parents tab. Sometimes it's in the bottom of the About Us tab. It's usually a couple places on every website where you can enter an anonymous tip at any time, and it will go to the school administration. But we actually have a third party monitoring the tip line. So if anything is particularly urgent, they can instantly contact school staff. And as I said, it's anonymous, so it's a good way to let us know if there's anything going on. And I should have switched it sooner. Sometimes I fall into reading the slide. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to cover is, well, we want to give a big thank you to the community for the passage of measures K and L. This is funding that will primarily go to classroom modernization, but you may have seen over the summer the solar panels going up across the district. Thanks to K and L, we've been able to hugely expand our solar footprint to the point where we have about 1,400 solar panels across the district. Through the life of those panels, it's expected to save almost $10 million. They produce 700,000 kilowatt hours of energy annually, and that makes for a carbon reduction of 1 million pounds of CO2 annually. We're incredibly excited about it, both for the fiscal impact and the sustainability impact on our local environment. The other big project for KNL, and probably the first building project that's going to come out of KNL, are the 80 units of workforce housing for educators and support staff that will be built on Swift Street on the west side on land that the school district already owns and is currently unoccupied next to the Gateway campus. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that if you want to see the facilities master plan, which is the big schedule of projects that are attached to both the previous bonds A and B and K and L, you can always find those on our website. If you go to sccs.net, there will be a bonds tab where you can learn about what we've been working on, but also see the master plan going forward for K and L that was put together in 2022. And that concludes the sort of info download of everything that we would like you to know coming into the school year. We're incredibly excited to be starting another school year. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for coming with your questions. And yeah, now I really encourage everyone to start typing in their questions or anything that has come up from my presentation here that you would like to know more about. Because yeah, there's a lot to know and it can be hard to navigate. So we like to give you these opportunities to kind of ask us anything.
Sam, there's one question that I'd like to address with everyone, and that's about, the question was, you've talked a lot about academic supports and emotional and social emotional supports, but what are the options when my child needs to be more challenged academically than they're being challenged? And I want to talk about, because it varies a little bit for each grade span. And when I talk about grade spans, I mean elementary school, middle school, and high school. And in elementary school, well, actually, before I talk about elementary specifically, all of our teachers we work as professional learning communities in our schools. So that grade level teams, department teams, they all focus on work and look at teaching with 4 questions in mind. The first is, what do I want kids to know and be able to do? And we may have agreements about that, and it's based on state standards. And the second question is, how will I know when they've learned it? And so how am I measuring that? How am I checking for understanding? How do I know that students have reached a mastery? And the other question is, what do I do when students haven't learned what I'm teaching, or when they know it already? So what do I do to extend? And then it's looking at, what do I do to intervene, to provide support, or what do I do to extend and have them take this concept to the next level and apply it to some new learning? So that's a part of the conversations our teachers have during their collaboration times every week. And in elementary school, this looks like lots of different things. It can happen in the classroom and it can happen outside the classroom. Teachers have different groups during RTI time. There are different groups, and there's kids who are working at higher levels academically and kids who are getting extra support during that intervention time. So that happens within the classroom. There's also great opportunities for kids to have enrichment. In our elementary schools, we've had incredible art and music instruction, thanks to the parcel taxes TNU that have been passed by our community, and from some new resources that are coming from the state. Those resources, the art and music resources, have been expanded. Students in upper elementary can participate in advanced band if they want to do that after school, in addition to the during school music instruction. And again, the teachers teach in a workshop model that allows them to accelerate within the classroom in elementary school, be it in science and mathematics or in language arts. In middle school, students can again accelerate within the classroom, different groupings within the classroom. There's also all kinds of opportunities for students to explore interests, clubs. Any student can start a club. Any student can participate in the leadership program on the school site. Students can accelerate in mathematics. If you come in 6th grade and you need to accelerate to 7th grade math, you can accelerate to 7th grade math. If you need to accelerate to 8th grade math, you can accelerate to 8th grade math, and you can take high school courses concurrently from any of our middle schools. Typically that doesn't happen often, but kids often do accelerate into the math pathway, and we offer the first level of high school math in our middle schools. In our high schools, there's all kinds of ways to accelerate. We have advanced placement and international we have advanced placement courses and or international baccalaureate courses, depending on the high school you're attending, that are rigorous college preparatory, are actually courses where students can earn college credit while attending the high schools. We also offer concurrent enrollment at Cabrillo. and students may choose to take a college course while attending high school. There are a lot of other ways for students to be challenged and accelerate themselves, and working with your school counselor, your school teachers is the best way to pursue those avenues. Does anybody want to add anything to that? Because I kind of went through it really quickly on the panel.
I'd say at least in, anecdotally in my kid's classroom, I really like the workshop model. It allows a student who has already gone through the curriculum that's been presented to really easily just keep going and keep moving. And yeah, that's appreciated.
Let's look at other questions here. There's some feedback about posting information on public websites about where students are. That's really good feedback. We'll follow up on that with our school sites. I haven't seen that personally, so we'll be checking that.
Like a great question on cost of living and supporting educators and housing. I bet Chris would love to answer that.
Want to read it to me because I haven't found it.
Yeah, sorry, I know they're coming in fast. And now I lost it here. Yes, so what is the district doing to combat high cost of living with low educator wages? When will the 80 educator units of housing be ready?
Not fast enough, but we are super excited that we're going to be one of a very few set of districts in the state of California that have housing for our staff. As you may have read, the county of Santa Cruz is the most expensive county to live in the United States. When you look at salaries versus housing costs, it's also just been really difficult for folks to keep rentals here, which is the same thing that everyone in our community is experiencing. So we're hoping within 3 years, 3 to 4 years, we'll have that built and ready to go, and that it's going to be a great tool for us for retaining the outstanding staff that we've been able to recruit to serve our students. Are there other questions we want to answer out loud for everyone here? There's a question about teaching students to distinguish between facts and misinformation. We have something also in our district because of the voters that through Measures T and U, we have credentialed librarians on all of our campuses, and they do a lot of work with students on teaching them information literacy and teaching them how to identify when a source is valid and when a source is invalid. And it is an incredibly important thing as we teach our kids to be engaged civically, and as learners in a world where so much information is available online, to discern what information is good information for me and what information is not. And it's an important part of our curriculum.
Yeah, I'm going to expand on that and then answer another question. The libraries also just do a good job of teaching students how to behave safely online and how to be guarded with their information and have sort of good online best practices to keep themselves safe, in as well as navigating information that's out there. I did want to answer this one live because it seemed quite important. The keyless locking system has its own dedicated power source and sensor. So if the power's out and the Wi-Fi is out, I guess the Wi-Fi would be out, but the internet could go down and they continue to work. The power could go out and they continue to work. And the other feature is regardless of what state it's in. It could be regularly locked or put into lockdown mode. All doors will always open from the inside of a classroom, so you can never get locked in. And that's the general pitch on the keyless locks.
There's a question about Google Classrooms. And in our secondary schools, our middle schools and our high schools, we use Google Classroom as a way to organize the content of a class, and digitally. Students will turn a lot of their work in online. Parents will get notifications from their students' Google Classroom. Both of my kids went through our schools. My youngest just graduated. I'm grieving as I'm sending kids off to college, and I'm going to have an empty nest, and I'm not going to get those Google Classroom notifications anymore. But it updated me what the focus was for the week, and whether or not my child had missed any assignments or not.
Yeah, that's a great resource. I would add to that, Chris, just in case your teacher doesn't invite you, or if your student's schedule was changed after the beginning of the year, you might miss that invite. So if you don't get that invite, it doesn't hurt to just give them a little reminder, and they'll make sure that they do that. They've got to push a button and do a mass invite to all of their students' parents.
There's a question about not getting the email for tonight's webinar, but getting the text. And I just wanted to say, if you didn't get the email or you didn't get the text, it's because of the preferences you've set up in your communication in Infinite Campus. Either you can send us an email and we can change it, or you can go on to the Infinite Campus parent portal and change it yourself. Sometimes people get tired of email or text, and you disable our ability to send it to you. And it's important that you go in and re-enable it.
In addition to that, sometimes it's confusing if you have a student in a split household. You can get information in both households, not just one, and that's all in those settings as well. And our community coordinators are really good at that and can help you in the main office if you're not sure about those settings.
There's a question about whether we have a plan for extreme weather events, and the answer is yes. We plan for all kinds of difficulties. We've had to learn how to deal with wildfires and pandemics, and flooding and all kinds of things. So, every situation we've found is unique. And so we have our team ready to respond and communicate with what we'll do in different situations. And it's tough for me to, I feel like all of our weather is extreme right now. So tough to say exactly for what specific situation you're talking about, but we do plan for that. We and try to be ready to support kids and families in different situations.
I see a great question by Seth. He asks, can you point me to a resource that would describe what skills would be expected of a student by grade level and subject? Because I'd like to know what to be working on at home and whether there are any deficits. And this would be specifically for elementary school. And I can start, and somebody may want to add to that, but there's great resources on the state website for sure for the California state standards. We follow those state standards really closely. And then there are a lot of those standards. And so by grade level, our teachers with support from the district office have selected priority standards. And these are the standards that are high leverage, really important standards that might warrant a little extra focus time. And we focus on those in particular at maybe a higher level. And I think that your teacher could either tell you what those priority standards are, or you might be able to get something from the school principal as well. It's a great question.
There's a question about how much time do students spend in front of screens. Particularly interested in the TK5 level. There is a lot of instruction that does happen with screens. And there's a lot of instruction that doesn't happen with screens. We try to create opportunities for our students to explore the natural world. Our science curriculum at every grade level is inquiry based and based on the next generation science standards that the students may be working with it, for example, in science, inquiry around natural phenomena, but then they're going to write about it and create charts and graphs about it using their technology. And in terms of TK5, we also do have some online programs that helps to differentiate instruction for students. So for kids, again, teaching at their zone of proximal development where they're learning reading or math, that there is some online programs, not all of their instruction online, but there is some online practice that's going to happen at their level. And for kids that need extra support, that's an opportunity for extra support. And for students who need extension and can go beyond the concepts that they're currently focused on in the classroom, that's another way they are accelerating. There's the question about Google Classroom. I think that was answered. If you don't get those notifications, reach out to your child's teachers. So there's a question about how do we support our migrant families? We have lots of systems of support for our migrant families. Those come through our student services department and at each of our school sites. We have programs for newcomer students who are learning English. We also partner with an agency or a nonprofit parent group that's run by parents in our district called Senderos that supports students in maintaining their language and their culture through dance and music and academic tutoring and language. So lots of ways that we do that. We also, how do we teach kids about the importance of welcoming all kinds of different people into our community? That happens in all kinds of ways on our campuses, through the literature that we teach, through the cultures we set up in our classrooms. I have a student advisory that's on race and equity that's composed of secondary, middle, and high school students who have helped guide our school district in being welcoming and supportive of all students and their cultures and their backgrounds. Are our schools staffed as needed? Oh, Sam is answering that. Yeah, I'm really proud that we're fully staffed with all of our teachers for the start of the school year. That's a feat in today's world. It's tough, in every industry, staffing is difficult, and we are fully staffed. We have it's a staff with as many people. We could always use more people. We'd always wish we could have smaller student to adult ratios, but we have some pretty good student to adult ratios on our campuses, and have some wonderful teachers that you and your children are going to get to meet soon.
Okay, I have to give a selfish plug because I see that there's some kinder and parents with newer students in this district. And you might be able to tell I'm older and I've been in this business a long time and in multiple districts. And I now bring my youngest student all the way over to Santa Cruz City Schools, even though I don't live in the neighborhood, because this is an unbelievable district. Chris talked about, and Sam echoed the credentialed librarians, the broad music program, the level of social emotional counseling that exists. These things are not common across the county and across the state. We are so lucky to be in this district, and I'm sure that's why we're fully staffed, because I know that is not necessarily the case in districts around us, because people want to work here, and you're lucky to have your kiddo here. We all are.
Another follow-up question about migrants, English learner support via ELAC and available transportation as well. We do provide transportation for our students who need to have transportation for various reasons. We can't unfortunately provide it for all students. But we do provide English learner support. That ELAC is our English Learner Advisory Council, and that's where parents of English learner families and migrant families have a voice in what happens for their children's educations. There's a question about SROs. We do have SROs in our school district. One, we partner with both the Santa Cruz Police Department and with the Sheriff's Department, and they help us to keep our campus safe. They help us with our planning, our safety planning, our safety drills. We're grateful to them for their partnership, and we really bring a restorative approach to our work with children, and as issues happen. And yes, we do. So do you have training in restorative justice? Yes, we've had training in restorative justice at all of our high schools, and positive behavior interventions and supports K-8, and we're expanding positive behavior interventions and supports to our high schools. Both the Santa Cruz Police Department and Sheriff's Department have been great partners and allies with us as we work to have discipline be about learning and changing behaviors to support student success. Do we partner with mental health clinicians? Yes, we have our own mental health clinicians on campus. And we partner with county mental health and other agencies to make sure that we can get the resources our students need.
Piggybacking off of that a little bit, I mentioned in the presentation that, we really want to make sure that students understand that those resources are there, not just for when they're in crisis. There doesn't have to be a threshold met or anything like that. And so in the high schools, they do a fun thing where they have a mental health fair, where they bring in different mental health providers and organizations and youth activities and things like that from all over the county. And they do a really good job of just sort of making sure that everyone understands, like, mental health is not like, going to see the doctor after you've broken a bone. It's a, there's a daily practice of positive mental health, and everyone's involved in it. And it really opens those doors for students to explore all the resources around the county.
So there's a question about homeschooling versus the other schools. There's some differences on the homeschooling campus, and you can get more specific information from your site administrators. But families who do homeschooling, especially 6 through 12 families, can also concurrently enroll into some of the courses in our middle schools and high schools if that's of interest to you. We issue students email addresses. So there's a question about this. Students are assigned an email address in Santa Cruz City Schools, and that's the email that the district will communicate with students through. Are there any other questions out there? We want to make sure that we get your questions answered. And we want you to know too that we're always here to provide support, as are your site teachers and counselors and administrators. We're here to serve you and to support you and your children. We want it to be an incredible learning experience for them.
And the last thing I'll say before you go is, as I said, we probably will send out a follow-up. I think we'll be able to send to attendees. But if you want to see the slides from the presentation, I've actually put them up on the on our front page of the district website. There should be a news item for the webinar, and I added the slide deck to that. So if you want to, review anything while it's still fresh, go for it.
And we're recording this, so we'll post the recording tomorrow too. Many people contacted me to say they wouldn't be available this evening, but wanted to see a recording of the webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're grateful to you for taking the time, and we hope that this has been a valuable information session. We really encourage you to get involved in your child's school in whatever way you can. And I know for some busy parents that may be that the hours of being engaged is tough, but every time you ask your child about what they learned and what was good about their day and what was challenging about that day, you are involved and you are engaged, and never hesitate to reach out with questions, concerns in the hours you do have to do that. And if you want to come and be on campus and volunteer too, we welcome that, whatever works for you. But we are partners in your children's education, and we're grateful to you for being here this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.